Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, escalating tensions in the Middle East. How President Trump says negotiations with Iran are going, and the president in Corpus Christi today touting his energy agenda and pushing for election integrity ahead of Tuesday's heated primary. Mario Tsu at the White House. The speculation continues over the possibility of imminent military action in Iran. Lawmakers are preparing for a high-stakes showdown over war powers. Chris Bob with the details. Pakistan says almost 300 Taliban terrorists are dead after the country launches strikes on Afghanistan overnight. Pakistan is declaring the conflict an open war. Arian Pazdar has what President Trump says about the escalation. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says that her phone and laptop were bugged. Jason Blair has the details. And a rare testimony by a former president. Bill Clinton is facing lawmakers as part of an investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. What lawmakers are trying to find out and what they are saying about the deposition.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Trump touting his energy agenda in Corpus Christi ahead of Texas's hotly contested Tuesday primary, and the president giving an update on Iran negotiations as the U.S. builds up its forces in the Middle East. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Tsu at the White House. Mari, good evening.
Hey, Tiff, good evening. Yeah, just this past hour, President Trump was there in Corpus Christi touting his energy agenda and celebrating the fact that gas went below $2.30 there in Corpus Christi. And it's just 4 days before the Texas primaries there. And he teased endorsing someone, saying he's pretty much decided who to endorse in that Senate race, although ultimately didn't end up sharing who that was. All three candidates were there, though. It was Senator John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, and Wesley Hunt. And also ahead of the primaries, he's pushing there for election integrity, saying that he's calling on Congress to pass the Save America Act immediately. Take a look.
We're also fighting to pass the Save America Act, my all-time favorite. It's my all-time favorite, the Save America Act. You have an identification for everything, except for one of the most sacred things you can be doing is voting. And the reason they don't want voter ID is because they want to cheat. Because the only way they can get elected is to cheat, because their policies are no good.
Meanwhile, Tiff, this is coming as President Trump says that he is not happy with Iran negotiations. He says that they're not negotiating in good conscience and in good faith, and that they won't agree, essentially, to not developing a nuclear weapon. And today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is also designating Iran as a state sponsor of wrongful detention. The State Department saying that no American should travel to Iran for any reason, and that any Americans in Iran now should leave immediately. It's also coming as the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, tells U.S. embassy staff in Israel to leave today if they want to. And it's just a day after that third round of talks wrapped up in Geneva between the U.S. and Iran. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio is now set to visit Israel on Monday and Tuesday to talk about these negotiations. Take a look.
No nuclear weapon. We want no nuclear weapons by Iran, and they're not saying those golden words.
President Trump's warning coming amid the largest military deployment in the Gulf since the 2003 buildup to the Iraq War. And as Reuters reports that Iran is close to a deal with the Chinese regime to purchase anti-ship cruise missiles. According to weapons experts, these missiles would pose a significant threat to U.S. naval forces in the region.
We're negotiating right now, but they're not getting to the right answer. We're not going to see what's happened for 47 years keep going.
It'd be wonderful if they negotiate really in good conscience, good faith and conscience, but they are not getting there. We have the greatest military anywhere in the world. There's nothing close. I'd love not to use it, but sometimes you have to.
Meanwhile, President Trump pressuring Cuba, saying Secretary of State Marco Rubio is dealing with the issue at a very high level.
The Cuban government is talking with us. They're in a big deal of trouble, as you know. They have no money. They have no anything right now, but they're talking with us. And maybe we'll have a friendly takeover of Cuba. We could very well end up having a friendly takeover of Cuba.
Since Maduro's ouster, President Trump has repeatedly said communist Cuba is in big trouble. It's been crippled by severe oil shortages, and the president last month declared a national emergency over Cuba, threatening tariffs on nations that provide oil to the communist regime. In the order, he blasts the regime for harboring adversaries, spreading communist ideology across the hemisphere, persecuting dissidents, and threatening U.S. national security. The order says Cuba aligns itself with, quote, numerous hostile countries, naming China, Russia, and Iran.
What the Cuban people should know is this, that if they are hungry and they are suffering, it's not because we're not prepared to help them. We are. It's that the people standing in the way of us helping them is the regime. It's their Communist Party. That's who's standing in the way.
Meanwhile, President Trump is ordering all federal agencies to stop using Anthropic AI. He says that specifically for the Department of War, there will be a 6-month phase out, and then they will no longer use it. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates. As speculation mounts over the possibility of an imminent U.S. strike on Iran, lawmakers prepare for a high-stakes showdown over war powers next week. NTD's Chris Bob reports.
Friday, Canada telling its citizens to, quote, leave Iran now if you can do so safely. The United States evacuating staff from its embassy in Israel, China urging its citizens in Iran to leave, Britain evacuating diplomatic staff, the move signaling growing concern that a U.S. strike or broader regional conflict could be imminent. The Senate Armed Services Committee will hold a meeting Tuesday morning on Capitol Hill to receive an update on national defense strategy. The sole witness, Elbridge A. Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, the Pentagon's top policy advisor, and a key architect of U.S. strategic posture. The hearing comes amid rising tensions in the Middle East. Lawmakers from both parties demanding answers. Oregon Senator Jeff Markley saying Friday that Congress can compel a vote to halt military action without formal authorization for use of force.
But we have an instrument to bring to bear called the War Powers Act, in which we can force a vote of Congress to say, no, you have to stop and desist unless you can get approval from Congress, and that approval is called an authorization for the use of military force. So we will absolutely use every tool the Constitution gives us and the law gives us to rein in President Trump. We should recognize wars are easily started, they're hard to end, and they're absolutely devastating in blood and in treasure.
House Democrats plan to force a vote on the War Powers Act next week, but some argue the threat from Tehran is too great to ignore. Senator Tom Cotton on Friday warning that Iran's space launch program uses the same technology required to build intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States. Posting on X, quote, we cannot allow Iran to continue to build this massive missile arsenal to threaten our people, our homeland, our troops, and our friends. Meanwhile, Republican Congressman Warren Davidson said he has requested a classified briefing defining the mission in Iran, saying, quote, I will support the War Powers resolution in the House next week. War requires congressional approval. There are actions short of war, but no case has been made. President Trump Friday addressing negotiations with Iran and the possibility of using the military for regime change.
It'd be wonderful if they'd negotiate really in good conscience, good faith and conscience, but they are not getting there. But look, we have the greatest military anywhere in the world. There's nothing close. I'd love not to use it, but sometimes you have to.
Reporting from Washington, D.C., Chris Bob, NTD News.
How close are we to a potential U.S. military strike on Iran, and how would the president prevent it from turning into a prolonged conflict? Hear from retired U.S. Marine Colonel William Dunn tonight on Capitol Report at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Pakistan is declaring open war on the Taliban in neighboring Afghanistan. Pakistan says almost 300 Taliban fighters are dead after launching strikes on Afghanistan overnight. President Trump already weighing in. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has more.
And I get along with Pakistan, as you know, very well. Very, very well. You have a great prime minister. You have a great general there. You have a great leader.
President Trump praising the Pakistani leadership and saying that the country is doing great when asked about the escalation in tensions between Pakistan and Taliban terrorists in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is entering yet another war. Pakistan says it killed over 270 Taliban fighters in Afghanistan, launching airstrikes on over 20 different locations. Pakistani officials are declaring open war, saying they have no more patience to deal with the Taliban terrorists in Afghanistan. Footage shows cars completely destroyed after the strikes. Hospitals in multiple Afghan cities now overflowing as staff is trying to help the wounded.
My wife's hand was injured badly in that incident, and my nephew was injured too, and both are now lying in the hospital in critical condition.
Pakistan has been plagued by terrorist attacks from the Pakistani branch of the Taliban. That's why Pakistan previously already struck Taliban targets in neighboring Afghanistan. But Friday's airstrikes and the declaration of open war are taking things to another level.
The oppressive Afghan Taliban regime has to make a clear choice.
Pakistan's military says the Taliban has to choose between supporting its branch in Pakistan or supporting the Pakistani government. The spokesperson also says that its attacks on the over 20 locations destroyed more than 100 tanks, among other crucial military equipment.
All these targets were very carefully selected based on intelligence. They are military targets, and great care was exercised so that there is no civilian collateral damage.
The Taliban now saying it already launched retaliatory strikes, which killed over 50 Pakistani soldiers. NTD can't independently verify the number of casualties reported from either side. Despite launching retaliatory strikes, the Taliban say they are willing to find a peaceful solution, blaming Pakistan for allegedly not being willing to negotiate. Residents in Kabul now dealing with the aftermath of the steep escalation in tensions between the two sides.
Many people were injured by broken glass and had to be treated until late at night. It was a very terrifying incident, and everyone is extremely distressed because of these problems.
The United Nations weighing in on the strikes as well, saying the latest developments are, quote, extremely concerning. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
War Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced that the Pentagon will stop sending its officers to graduate programs at Ivy League universities. In a video posted on X, Hegseth said the prestigious institutions of higher education have been subjecting U.S. service members to indoctrination.
For decades, the Ivy League and similar institutions have gorged themselves on a trust fund of American taxpayer dollars, only to become factories of anti-American resentment and military disdain. They've taken our best and brightest, the men and women who pledged their lives to this nation, and subjected them to a curriculum of contempt. They've replaced the study of victory and pragmatic realism with the promotion of wokeness and weakness. They've traded true intellectual rigor for radical dogma, sacrificing free expression for the suffocating confines of leftist ideology.
Hegseth said the policy will go into effect from the 2026 to 2027 academic year. Earlier this month, Hegseth said he would cancel professional military education fellowships and certificate programs with Harvard University. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem reveals that her phone and laptop were tapped. This while the Department of Justice announces new arrests in the ICE-related protests that disrupted a church in Minnesota last month. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has the details.
The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says that her phone and computer were bugged.
Some of my own employees in my department had downloaded software on my phone and my laptop. They had done that to several of the politicals.
Noem didn't indicate exactly when the spyware was discovered. She says that Elon Musk and his team of tech experts helped her uncover it.
If you didn't have those technology experts here in the department looking at all of our laptops and our phones and recognizing that kind of software, it would still be happening today.
Secretary Noem also says that a secret area was found on DHS grounds just the other day.
I just found the other day a whole room on this campus that was a secret SCIF, secure facility that had files nobody knew existed.
A SCIF is a highly secure enclosed area commonly used in government and military facilities. She says an employee happened to walk by and see it and started asking questions.
We went in there was individuals working there that had secret files that nobody knew about.
Since the discovery, Noem says that she has contacted attorneys and is getting to the bottom of what's going on.
I always believed when people talked about the deep state before that it existed. I never would have dreamed that it was as bad as it is.
In other federal news, the Department of Justice announces that 30 more people have been indicted over the protests that took place in a Minnesota church in January. Attorney General Pam Bondi says, at my direction, federal agents have already arrested 25 of them, with more to come throughout the day. The incident happened at a church in St. Paul during a Sunday morning service. A group of activists entered the church looking for an assistant pastor who allegedly also works for ICE. In January, former TV host Don Lemon was also indicted in the incident. Lemon pleaded not guilty at his arraignment earlier this month and says that he was at the church as a journalist. Assistant Attorney General for the DOJ Civil Rights Division, Harmeet Dillon, says the 30 individuals were indicted for violating the FACE Act and the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, both which safeguard religious worship and constitutional rights from interference and conspiracy. Jason Blair, NTD News.
Former President Bill Clinton testifying today before members of Congress. This comes as part of the House Oversight Committee's Epstein probe and a day after former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testified. Committee members say Clinton has been very cooperative during the deposition. The former president says in his opening statement, quote, "Though my brief acquaintance with Epstein ended years before his crimes came to light, and though I never witnessed during our limited interactions any indication of what was truly going on, I am here to offer what little I know so that it might prevent anything like this from ever happening again." Clinton adds, quote, "I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong." The deposition is behind closed doors, but videos will be made public soon. This would mark the first time in over 40 years that a sitting or former president is testifying before members of Congress. The former first couple initially refused to testify after being subpoenaed, but they agreed after lawmakers began contempt proceedings. Coming up, Netflix is backing out of the bidding to buy Warner Brothers. It says Paramount's offer makes the deal no longer financially attractive. David Lamb has more. New audio recordings played in court today as cross-examination continued in the social media addiction trial. Attorneys questioned whether challenges in the plaintiff's home life contributed to her mental health struggles. Christina Corona reports. And American Thought Leaders host Yania Kellick discusses the horrors of forced organ harvesting, a topic he's been following for 20 years. Arlie Richards brings you the interview highlights. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Netflix is backing out of the bidding to buy Warner Brothers. It says that Paramount's latest offer makes the deal no longer financially attractive for Netflix. NTD's David Lamb reports.
In the bidding war to acquire Warner Brothers, Netflix says it's declining to raise its offer, conceding to Paramount. Netflix says its initial deal would have strengthened the entertainment industry and preserved and created more production jobs in the U.S., but this transaction was always a nice-to-have at the right price, not a must-have at any price. Reuters reported that Warner Brothers agreed to be acquired by Paramount Skydance in a $110 billion deal. Warner Brothers owns DC Studios, including popular titles like Superman and Harry Potter.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
A wizard.
Marking a milestone in the bidding war after Netflix declined to match Paramount's $31 per share offer. Warner Brothers deemed Paramount's proposal superior to Netflix's $27.75 per share offer. Paramount stock spiked as much as 24% on Friday, while Netflix rose over 13% as investors welcomed its decision to back out of the deal. Paramount was eyeing Warner Brothers since late last year when Paramount started increasing its offer, wanting to buy all of Warner's operations, including CNN.
Democratic and Republican lawmakers have expressed concerns that making any deal to acquire Warner Brothers could result in higher prices and fewer choices for the public. Now, the U.S. Justice Department has already initiated antitrust reviews, and other countries are expected to do so as well. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
It's the second day of testimony for the woman at the center of the social media addiction trial in Los Angeles. The plaintiff returned to the stand today, facing cross-examination from defense attorneys. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more from the courthouse.
Yesterday we heard from Kaylee, and she shared how she was addicted to her phone and how she would sneak it in her room in the middle of the night and take it to school, and how social media apps contributed to her mental health harms. However, today she was cross-examined by Meta and YouTube, and they claim that other situations in Kaylee's life may have contributed to her depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts, such as Kaylee's mom Karen allegedly abusing and neglecting Kaylee, and the fact that her father was not present in her life. Jurors heard 2 audio recordings Kaylee had secretly captured on her phone. In them, a woman identified as her mother can be heard yelling, using profanity, and calling Kaylee names such as lazy. The recording's content was intense, emotional, and difficult to listen to inside the courtroom. Attorneys also pointed to allegations that Kaylee's mother would physically hit her for receiving bad grades, fail to pick her up from school at times, while her mother engaged in other activities like going to the gym, and frequently weigh Kaylee on a scale. Instagram attorneys showed the jurors screenshots of Kaylee's posts, including one that read, "Why does my mom hate me so much? She makes me want to unalive myself." Jurors also saw text messages Kaylee sent to her sister saying, "How do I get mom to stop weighing me?" When questioned about those posts, Kaylee said that her mother was doing her best. Kaylee also said that she no longer feels any resentment toward her mother and that they have a great relationship now. She also testified that some of her posts were made to get attention from others. The judge has ordered media not to describe Kaylee's physical appearance, and her attorneys have asked photographers not to capture images of her from the front. Kaylee's attorney says Kaylee wishes to remain anonymous through the end of the trial and that her mother will be testifying next week. Reporting from downtown Los Angeles, Christina Corona, NTD News.
The host of American Thought Leaders, Jan Jekielek, sat down with Voice of America to discuss his new book, Killed to Order. NTD's Arlene Richards brings us the highlights.
I think it has deep, profound national security implications.
Jan Jekielek, host of Epoch TV's American Thought Leaders and the Washington bureau chief of the Epoch Times, has followed for 20 years Chinese Communist Party's business of forced organ harvesting. He said the regime is killing people of faith, ethnic minorities, and anyone else it may deem an enemy of the state in order to harvest their organs for profit. And some of their clients come from countries such as the United States, but they're being coerced into silence or complicity. The mounting evidence on the topic has been compiled in a book he wrote called Killed to Order.
We're working with a regime that has killed to order as a standard part of its operating methods.
In an interview with Voice of America last week, Jekielek explained how the regime built out a system where anyone around the world can pay 6 figures and receive a new organ in 2 weeks. The average wait time is usually counted in years.
You have to be able to push coercive power through into a population. You have to be able to propagandize a population heavily, basically to believe, to dehumanize a group of people that you're going to use for this, okay? And the second part is you have to be able to have the power to incarcerate a huge group of people, maybe 1 million.
He said the CCP achieved this in the early 2000s after it had incarcerated large numbers of Chinese citizens who were members of the spiritual group Falun Gong.
This was spiritual discipline. The government estimate was that 70 to 100 million people were doing it. A group of people practicing truthfulness, compassion, forbearance were suddenly, on the most wanted list.
Jiang Zemin was the Chinese leader involved at the outset of this massive campaign. He wanted the group eradicated. Jekielek said the regime pushed massive propaganda into the Chinese population.
The moment that you start believing that someone is less than human, that allows you to do terrible things. This is why genocides happen.
Jekielek said there's evidence of early experimentation on Uyghurs in Xinjiang before Falun Gong. And now he believes massive numbers of Uyghurs are also being detained in labor camps and possibly subjected to forced organ harvesting. Jekielek talks more about his new book, including the regime's organ harvesting industry and evidence contradicting its official line, in an upcoming interview with Rob Schneider on American Thought Leaders.
But I already knew what the Chinese Communist Party was capable of, broadly, but I still didn't want to accept that this could be happening because it's so extreme.
You can watch Jekielek's full interview with Rob Schneider Saturday on NTD or Epoch TV. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Coming up, what are the chances of U.S. military strikes on Iran, and is there still a chance for diplomacy? Middle East affairs analyst David Wormser joins us to discuss. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. All eyes are on the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks as tensions build. Joining us now is David Wormser, Middle East Affairs Analyst at the Center for Security Policy and former Senior Advisor to Vice President Cheney on the Middle East and Strategic Affairs. David, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have you with us. Now, President Trump today giving reporters his thoughts on the latest round of talks. Let's actually watch that now.
We're not happy with the negotiation. They just don't want to. They don't want to say the key words, we're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They have to say, we're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And they just can't quite get there.
How are you reading this and the chances of a negotiated end?
Well, I think that yesterday President Trump was expecting a very serious response from Iran that goes most of the way to what's being demanded, and it didn't arrive. So he's upset and disappointed, and he believes that the negotiations are now being intentionally dragged out. And he also realizes that this was only the first part, which is the nuclear part, and then there's the missiles and so forth. So while I think he still gives Iran a little bit of a window over the next few hours, maybe days, to capitulate essentially and give in to the demands, but I believe he's more or less now looking as if he realizes the diplomatic track is coming to an end.
When it comes to tensions in the region, China telling its citizens in Iran to evacuate as soon as possible, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio just designating Iran as a state sponsor of wrongful detention, ending the announcement with, quote, "No American should travel to Iran for any reason. We reiterate our call for Americans who are currently in Iran to leave immediately." How seriously should we read into this? Is this more for safety or a serious indicator of upcoming strikes?
Well, it's both a serious indicator of upcoming strikes and also for safety, because Iran has a very long history of taking hostages. Obviously, in 1979, it took our embassy hostage, but all along it's held hostages and then used them as bargaining chips. Hamas did this with Israel. It learned it from Iran. Iran really has made it a key principle of its foreign policy is to barter hostages for concessions. So the fear that Americans will be taken hostage in Iran, Iranian Americans visiting their family and so forth, is very real and very high.
In terms of Iran's allies, several reports from National Interest, Chatham House, etc., saying while China doesn't support Iran militarily, it sees Iran as a long game, helping flood the nation with dual-use technology and often wielding the veto vote at the United Nations. What are China's interests here? How should we understand this partnership?
Well, first and foremost, I think China's interest is to make sure that what happens in Iran doesn't have ripples that spread to Beijing. Specifically, this idea of freedom is infectious, and if Iran, the regime falls and there's a flourishing of freedom in Tehran, this can have ripple effect everywhere, Cuba, etc., that could reach to Beijing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it has a deep interest in just making the United States and its key allies fail. So while it has no real force projection capability in Iran to counter America's, and certainly the Israeli force projection in the region, it can give Iran technologies that trip up the United States and Israel, and it's apparently doing so in air defense, perhaps anti-drone technology, and some other issues perhaps as well. And then the third thing is exactly that. They know that Iran will now face the most advanced Western equipment in Israel's hands and in America's hands. And whatever it needs to learn about how we operate and how we go against the equipment in Iran could have a great deal of effect on their then adjusting their military posture and their equipment. So they have a great deal of interest in helping Iran here.
And if the U.S. were to strike Iran, what exactly would the U.S. be targeting here?
Well, I think the first thing would be to ensure that what has been reconstituted in the nuclear program, which is the buildings basically have begun to be reconstructed, would be hit and set it back to ground zero, because the nuclear program still is largely shut down. But then you have the large missile arsenal, which is actually as large as it was now on the eve of the war last summer on June 12th. And then the third thing is the proxy networks. The proxy networks have been killing Americans across the region and globally, and they've been destabilizing the region. And then the proxy networks were used extensively in January to suppress the uprising that the Iranian people had against the regime. And that leads to the fourth objective, which is to strike regime targets to help the Iranian people take over and liberate themselves. The Iranian people are essentially our ground troops at this point. Now, America may not be the only player here. It's quite possible Israel will play a major role or even the lead role in the first phase, simply because the missiles are the greatest threat to American troops and to Israeli cities. And the Israelis are very focused on the missiles. So you could see a very large Israeli strike alone or in coordination with the United States to first clear as many of the missile launchers as possible. And then you see the expansion into the other targets.
And how would Israel and the U.S. make sure this doesn't become a prolonged war?
Overwhelming force. First of all, to start hitting regime targets, to really link up with the Iranian people. My sense is that the Israelis and the United States have been working extensively with Iranians on the ground who are opposed to the regime, the Israelis very extensively since last June, and that they know who some of these leaders are who are leading the opposition uprising and so forth. So you will see them coupling with them to bring this also to the regime. But most importantly, the power of Israel and the United States can be applied to shut down and paralyze the regime, to help the Iranian people take matters into their own hands. That's how this could resolve. The other resolution is that there's such devastation to the Iranian regime that a few elements of it cry uncle and are giving up then everything that has bothered everybody, and including the proxy networks, which would threaten essentially the stability of the regime anyway, because that's how they suppress the Iranian people. So you could see a sort of a coup or something where the United States then will seize that and then run with that to try to end the war, but essentially still get exactly to where we need to get.
And David, with all these fast-moving developments, what are you watching here?
Well, obviously the skies over Iraq and Jordan and so forth, but I also would look carefully at Lebanon. The Israelis most likely will act in Lebanon to clear out the threat from Hezbollah in advance, and that actually has been happening the last few days. Last 96 hours, there was a great deal of strikes in Lebanon to shut down Hezbollah. I would also look to Hamas and to the Houthis, both of which could very well, in fact, will likely intervene with a lot of what they have left. And with the Houthis, that could be quite a bit. So you will see this be regional, not just Iran. But I don't anticipate a war that will last months. I think that the amount of force that is amassed against Iran, this is something that even last summer was only a 12-day war. We're talking about a much greater element of force now than there was last summer.
A lot at stake for sure. David Wormser, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Iran was one of many topics President Trump discussed during his State of the Union address this week. How are everyday Americans reacting to the speech? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
What do you think of the president's speech the other day?
You know, I think he came out really strong. He said a lot of the things that people were thinking. I don't know that anybody expected him to call out the Democratic side as much as he did that night.
Went a little long, but I loved every word of it.
Like a lot of the rhetoric, it was very divisive and attacking rather than trying to unite people and bring people together.
You know, he tells it like it is, and that's why we voted for him. Yeah, he's a little rough around the edges, but that's, you know, truly why we voted for him and put him in office.
I think he did a great job just honoring our heroes who served the nation, honoring the Coast Guard personnel who rescued over 100 lives in Texas during those floods. Pretty big, and just shouting out everyone who deserves it, and the country's doing great right now. I think he did a great job. One of the best I've heard for sure.
What were some of the highlights in your view?
The highlights, I want to say when he brought out the CW5 who was injured in the extraction of Maduro.
No real highlights. Well, there were highlights. The awarding of the medals was nice. The recognition of national heroes. I thought that was one of the positive parts of it.
When he was calling out, like, hey, like, stand up if you believe, like, the government should be supporting American civilians over illegal aliens, and all the Republicans stood up, I think, right or left, it's your job in the government to protect the rights of civilians and not people who came here illegally.
I liked the new retirement plan. It sounds like something, for our children and grandchildren that they can use to grow and grow their savings over time, and anything that can replace Social Security, if it does, will be great.
Do you think our country is heading in the right direction?
No, I do not. The biggest part of it is we have forgotten how to disagree agreeably. Just because somebody thinks differently, it doesn't make them wrong or evil or unpatriotic or hateful or ungodly.
Oh, absolutely it is. We've just about done a 180 from what it was, even a year and a half ago.
Finally, yeah. After going in a horrible direction for 4 years, I think he's doing the right thing. I think before the midterms, we're going to see the economy getting better. It's already getting better.
Personally, I think the future is bright for us. It may not seem like it in some parts, but in order to grow, you have to have your struggles. Him talking about with what happened with Maduro and the Medal of Honor there, he'll bring that into the operations that we did and how well-oiled our military is currently. Even though it might not seem like it to your average person, it's in a great spot right now.
Coming up in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys make a bold move to keep their star receiver. Dave Martin joins us to discuss. And now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, we've got NFL, World Cup, and college basketball news, but let's start in the NBA as Charlotte's Knueppel set a rookie record last night.
Yeah, Knueppel broke the rookie record for three-pointers made in a season when he hit his 207th last night against the Indiana Pacers. Now, Knueppel scored 28 points in the game, hit 8 threes on the night, tying his career high. He now has 209 on the season. That leads the whole NBA, not just rookies there as well. Now, just for some context, the rookie record was set 3 years ago by Keegan Murray, who hit 206 in 80 games. Knueppel has 209 in just 59 games, so quite a higher pace there. That's even well ahead of what all-time leader Steph Curry did as a rookie. Curry hit 166 back in 2010. Of course, Curry, though, has the all-time single-season record of 402, so he's a ways away from that. In any case, Knueppel is certainly one of the leading candidates to win Rookie of the Year, probably going to Cooper Kupp, if you ask me.
Okay, it's not the con man. Shifting gears to the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys will reportedly place the franchise tag on wide receiver George Pickens. What exactly does this mean for the Cowboys?
Yeah, well, it basically means they keep him from entering free agency this season for a hefty, 1-year salary. Basically, teams can place a franchise tag on a player whose contract runs out to keep him from signing elsewhere. The flip side is that tag, even though it's a 1-year contract, is expensive. I mean, it's the average of the top 5 salaries at their position, or 120% of their previous salaries. So for Pickens, that equates to a $27 million salary for the upcoming season. Now, last year was Pickens' first in Dallas after coming over via trade from Pittsburgh. He really had his best year ever, made the Pro Bowl, was a second-team All-Pro, set career highs in catches with 93 and receiving yards with more than 1,400. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out for Dallas, because the Cowboys already have CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver. Lamb is one of the best in the league, and he's paid as much, $34 million a season. It would be tough to allocate those two salaries just in one position and also be under the salary cap. That's roughly $60 million. Salary cap is $301 million, plus 20% just wide receivers. So we'll see how this actually works out there. Did you follow that?
Not slim pickings for Pickens.
I'm glad you're paying attention to that part.
I practiced that. Moving to World Cup news, though, there's been some security questions regarding the matches scheduled to take place in Mexico this summer following the recent death of a powerful drug lord. What has been FIFA's response?
Yeah, FIFA is going to be sending representatives to assess those security concerns in Mexico. That's according to Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. Now, that army operation that killed the drug lord on Sunday and all the violent repercussions ended up taking the lives of 70 people, so a very serious situation. The cartels have set some cars on fire. They blocked some streets as well. Some in even the same state as Guadalajara. Some concern, though, is the fact that World Aquatics has canceled a diving World Cup event that's scheduled for next week near Guadalajara. But Sheinbaum said that FIFA President Gianni Infantino assured her that the World Cup would still be held in their country. They are scheduled to host 13 matches between the three cities of Guadalajara, Mexico City, and Monterrey.
A lot happening in Mexico.
A lot happening.
We'll see if a lot of spring break gets canceled because of everything.
Boy, you know, I think they more prefer to go to Baja, right, for that. Maybe they'll have to go to Daytona.
Popular destination.
Well, yeah, you go to Daytona. You could always go to Daytona, or you go to Baja, maybe, or what's the other popular one? There's another.
Miami.
Miami, sure.
The complete opposite end of the country.
They have some options for those kids who want to get drunk and have a crazy time.
All right, well, looking at college basketball action tonight, we have a pair of games involving ranked teams, including one that's already in progress.
Yes, 21st ranked Miami of Ohio is playing Western Michigan right now. The Miami of Ohio, the Red Hawks, which is their nickname, they are the only undefeated team left in the country, yet they are really having trouble climbing up the polls, mainly due to their strength of schedule. They have not played a team yet that was ranked either at the time of their game or is currently ranked now, but their 28-0 record is still hard to argue with. Now, after today's game, they've got 2 more regular season games and then the conference tournament before the NCAA tournament starts. So there's a pretty good chance out now, looking like it, that they could enter the NCAA tournament with an undefeated record, which does not happen very often. Also tonight in the Big Ten, we've got a top 10 battle. Number 3 Michigan playing at 10th ranked Illinois. Wolverines are atop the Big Ten standings. They've got a three-game lead over 3 teams tied for second, including Illinois. A win tonight by Michigan would clinch the Big Ten title outright. So no ties.
A lot at stake.
Yeah, a lot at stake here. Very important game.
We know you'll be watching.
I'm going to be glued to the TV watching this one for sure.
Speaking of which, we'll let you go.
So nice to meet you.
Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And that's all for today's news. Round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.